You've found the slower corner of the internet. Welcome to Tend the Flame. So many of you have been here for a while, but we always want to welcome new listeners. This is a place to come and gather to, you know, and remind you that action removes doubt and wisdom provides clarity. I want to talk to you about fire, the element of fire. When was the last time you made one? I'm going to tell you a story about making a fire. It's relatively common for us to make fires, but we recently had a um, a wet rain that came with a deep winter chill. And we had been outside going for a walk, and we thought how wonderful it would be to come home to a fire. So we were simultaneously starting a fire that was an activity we normally do, but we weren't really accounting for the wetness in the kindling and in one of the pieces my 7-year-old had gathered. So we were multitasking, meaning that we were kind of assuming the fire was going to work at its regular pace, even though the environment and season was different, and we were making hot chocolate. Why is this relevant? Well, let's take our first pause. Multitasking is a farce. So let's step away from the subtle metaphor of fire, of building a flame. You know, that really fun part of building the fire when just the paper, the easy ignition, when you do that easy ignition, the flame goes really big and bright. It's just like when you start a project. It's so easy. You have this great idea. It's just going to go. And that inspirational spark does when that spark is ignited. You have to stay with it because what you're looking for is that big rush of paper fire to catch an ember, to ignite the base of the fire so you can add larger wood. We were split between the fire and the hot chocolate. We were multitasking. We weren't really giving it our full attention. We weren't just sitting patiently and maintaining our focus on the flame. In Keller Williams' book, one thing he talks about how multitasking puts your brain, your prefrontal cortex, and your hippocampus in overload. It interrupts high level thinking. Immediately answering all emails also interrupts high level thinking, and it can take up to half an hour to re engage your level of focus. As a side note, he studied that college students that were multitaskers, 62% of which chased unproductive tasks. Multitasking is a farce. So we started the fire. I assumed it was going to go, even though I sort of knew my conditions had changed. I was working the hot chocolate. So this could be you creating content, but answering emails, or you bopping between social media when you're doing another task. And I had to stack the paper 3 times because the initial whoosh would happen, but I wasn't staying present and focused on one task. And so we were going through brown paper bags and the wood was not igniting. I needed kindling. I know you need kindling. I had not accounted for systems. I had not accounted for the wood being wet, and I didn't want to run back outside. And I sat there thinking about how if I had just stayed put in the beginning, this fire would already be lit. And that I had burned the wood far enough that it would be a shame not to continue. How many of you are there right now with a change in your life that if you had stayed a little bit more focused, you'd be someplace else, but you're too far in and you know you're really close, so you don't want to quit? When I realized that, I remembered that there were just a couple of walking sticks propped against near the front of the house. So they should have been dry with the awning. I ran out and I got them, broke them, and I restacked the fire. I let it um, go down enough that I could take an honest assessment of what was too wet, create an airflow in between. And instead of doing anything else, I restacked my kindling. I restacked my paper and I sat and focused on the fire. I notice a lot that this metaphor of sitting still and focusing is starting to feel for a lot of us like we should be doing more. That being fully present for one task is not enough, even though it's a complete fallacy that you can be present for more than one thing at a time. I recently heard someone say that in a day, in a day, we take in like years of information for the generation before us because the scrolling and the images and all the things that we think aren't that important. Because if we go back to the fire, if it's oversaturated and there's not enough air, space, things can't move. Higher level thinking can't go through. There's no room. You're undigested. So when I was thinking about the kindling, I thought, well, tomorrow I'll, sooner than I thought, or, we'll make a new system so there's always dry kindling. There's always steps. And I saw someone else recently speak about how if you don't have a plan, you procrastinate because you don't know what to do. Whereas if you had a plan, you'd be moving forward with it and it'd be easier to pivot. So I saw this mentor. He was speaking to kids around 12 years old, and he had these plastic discs on the floor, and they were moving from the starting point, hopping on the plastic discs and reaching the mentor, and they were cheering. Yay, they did it. They hip hopped, they leapfrogged to the finish line, and they each got a high five. Then the mentor took away the intermediary steps, the small plastic discs, and he said, okay, who's going to go from the starting line and jump to me? And this very vibrant young man was like, I'm going to do it. And the mentor said, listen, I know your heart wants to do it. And I know if you could do it, you would make it happen. But there is no way that you will physically be able to jump from where you are to where I am. And he said to the young boys, that's why you need a plan. That is why you need to break your goals down into small, achievable steps. Kindling, or else you won't get there. Your heart can't take you without the steps to get you there. I also was thinking of all of this to share with you and about how the preciousness of fire and how soothing it is to our nervous system. And I've mentioned here and in other places the practice that I associate with Ayurveda and the yogic sciences of Tradaka, of staring into a flame, not an electronic flame, not an LED candle, an actual live element, and to let yourself. I mean, do you remember the last time you just let your gaze go soft into a fire and how it cackles and pops and how you just sort of zone out? Tradaka says that it can clear your eyes. Your eyes are connected to your liver. Your eyes take in images now. A lot of us have tired eyes because they're consuming all day long. The load of the eyes in consumption has categorically jumped. And so interesting because then we lose our vision. We don't know where to go. We don't know how to break it down into smaller steps. But instead of what we don't know, let's switch into what we do know. We do know that when we sit still, because you pressed play here, You said, "Oh, tend the flame." There's something about the simplicity of that that is speaking to me. So you already know that if you create the space, you'll see the steps to your success that's already seated inside of you. Isn't that amazing? And when you forget, you can look towards nature and she'll just guide you through that. What is it? The biofeedback. The greatest hack to living your best life as a human is staying connected to nature. So that when we deviate too much, whether it is doing too little or doing too much, nature will bring us back into the harmony of ourselves. So as this season ramps up, this holiday season, remember to slow down. And if it feels like you have a lot to do, I used to think as a kid that it was fascinating that for the really big Thanksgiving dinner, we would all go to my grandmother's house the night before and prep together, which is some of my favorite memories is the night before, the pizza and the breaking of the bread and the dividing of the tasks and everyone sleeping under one roof together. But the night before, not only would we be doing prep, they would get out all of the serving dishes and put them on the dining room table and write little pieces of paper what food would go into each dish. That meant that the day of, while everyone was there and the stories were going and people were singing and eating and children were running around, anyone could help because someone had remembered and created the small steps, the kindling, the structure, the direction, the container, the fire to bring everyone together. I appreciate that you bring your attention here to this podcast, and I intend that it is a slow flame of remembrance for you of what you already know. That if you slow down, you'll speed up. If you focus in on one thing, more will be accomplished. And that in a world that has a lot to say, you know how important it is to create a space of silence for you to remember the steps that you need to take to get where you, my friend, are destined to go. Thank you for being here and thank you for tending your flame.